Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And we have a reoccurring guest, as it should be, Chris Calandra. We got a lot to talk about. And Chris, I'm going to throw it out to you first. I talked to Dr. Lopkin before he went on air that I don't know if you still get access and view the Drudge Report, but it's shifted a bit. And they had the lead article that basically gave Trump a 9% chance of winning. Your comment on that? First of all, about the Drudge Report, if you knew that it's shifted, and then also about them giving Trump a 9% chance of winning.
Yes, I'm aware that Drudge has shifted leftward. I'm also aware that that has led to them getting a whole lot less traffic. So I'm not sure.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought they would get more traffic.
No, less traffic.
Didn't know that.
Because mostly Republicans and conservatives would go to Drudge Report, and now if they don't like the content and they go away, how do they attract more liberal, progressive Democrats? So they seem to be alienating one group without yet attracting the other group. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't go there anymore.
No, yeah, I was really kind of shocked by it, and then Tucker Carlson was commenting on it. So what do you think about the story, regardless of left or right leaning? What do you think of the story that gave Trump a 9% chance?
That seems a little pessimistic. It seems to me that Trump is behind, although he was behind in 2016 too. But it seems that Donald Trump does need to play catch-up and will need to up his game in the closing weeks of the election. But he is a closer. He's a fierce competitor. So I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that he catches up. And it's probably, I'm guessing, but my opinion would be probably more like a 30% chance that he wins, maybe 70-30 odds is what I would handicap it on, but difficult to tell.
Dr. Lopkin, Chris gives it a 70-30 favor of Biden. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's also way too pessimistic. Right now, they're very close. When we did the Carnivore Bites podcast earlier this week, I actually had Trump ahead 51-49. I think it's still somewhere in that. It's close, but I think it's really somewhere like 50.5 to 49.5, and it keeps going back and forth at that. The fact of the matter is, it really looks to me like the liberals know Biden is not doing as well as he appears, and they're desperately trying to close ranks. You had over 100 actors and producers from Hollywood try to convince NBC not to air the Trump town hall. You have Facebook and Twitter literally censoring the New York Post. So, I mean, this is a ridiculous amount of effort to go to block a presidential candidate if you think he's going to win.
Good point by Dr. Lopkin. Chris, couple things. Are you concerned about, let's just say, big media, social media, well, the current media, blocking content like they did? And also, with Stephanopoulos last night, he never asked Biden about the Hunter conflict.
Yes, it's funny. It's interesting how you want to look at it, Jeff, Eric, because on the one hand, I liked how George Stephanopoulos conducted the town hall. He let the candidates speak. He He was not confrontational. It was a relaxed kind of college-like kind of conversation. With that said, of course, then Biden takes liberties. It's tough to pin him down. He said some whoppers like politicians often do. But I actually liked it. It was a more enjoyable watching experience. The trouble is when you look at what Trump is confronted with in these venues is rabid opposition, interruptions, gotcha questions, really forcefully taking the other side of whatever President Trump says. So I can live with either one. It's that inconsistent treatment of Republicans versus Democrats.
I like the inconsistency. I think that's a great point, Chris, because Savannah Guthrie, she was just loaded for bear. I mean, I got you, a couple of tough questions. I get all that. But it was like, I think they had 3 people from the audience, and the rest was her against Trump.
Yes.
I think they only had 3 questions from the audience.
Yes, but which experience did you find more pleasing to watch? It was a little stressful watching the Donald Trump battle Guthrie. I'm not sure how much that does for society. I know there's a lot of criticism on George Stephanopoulos, but I kind of think he's closer to how it should be than what Chris Matthews did in the first debate and what Savannah Guthrie did yesterday, and probably what will happen in what was going to be the third debate. It'll be now the second debate with Martha Raddatz. Is they're only antagonistic to Donald Trump and challenging to Donald Trump, and not to the other side. It's terribly unfair.
Wait a second. Martha Raddatz is doing the second debate?
Is that right? I might have misspoke.
Dr. Lopkin, I don't know. She's the one that cried when he won in 2016.
Well, she wasn't the only one that did that. I mean, it was the behavior of the reporters in 2016 was horrific, and it hasn't gotten any better. I don't know who's moderating the next debate. It could be her, but I don't have any information on that.
Okay. But
Jeff,
if you did see, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, in terms of the second part of your question, what these powerful social media platforms are doing to free speech in America should alarm everyone, left, right, center, apolitical. They have protections in the law as a platform, that they're not held responsible for what's put on a platform, and not get treated like with what's on the content. And they're using this protection that was afforded to them as a sword instead of a shield, and them saying that basically something that President of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, he can discuss it in a rally and in the media, but it can't be bandied about on Twitter and Facebook. Is people often talk about the country moving towards a government, authoritarian government. That is the stuff of authoritarians, not even being allowed to discuss things and cutting off content, including, Jeff, content from the New York Post, which is the paper that has the fourth largest circulation in the United States. It's not some rag that's produced by somebody living in their parents' basement. It's the fourth biggest circulation in the country, and they cut off the New York Post's news feed. That is
Dr.
insane
Lopkin, I
and
think
very
Chris
dangerous.
is an amazing point. What do you think?
It has become a very dangerous situation. You have the mass media that is a clear bias. The fourth estate is no longer neutral. You have social media, cutting down comments about Hunter Biden, censoring a newspaper that has been around, not just fourth largest circulation. This newspaper has been around well over 100 years. So you're talking about responsible journalists, and now they're being censored.
Well, let's put it in perspective, Dr. Lopkin. If you had Don Jr., pictures of him with a crack pipe, trying to peddle influence, do you think it might be on the top of the evening news or what?
Absolutely. It would be at the top of the news. It would be trending on social media. But, Hunter Biden's off limits because his dad's a liberal, so...
But what does it say to Chris's point about our democracy? I mean, it's really scary that they're in the bag because they're globalists. They don't care about America. It's all about the big global community. And Trump is a threat to them. They've tried to take this guy down from the beginning. And Trump has tons of flaws. I'm not saying he's the greatest character in the world. He's not. But my God, can you believe that?
It really is. I can't even think of the right word. It's disappointing from the Democrats. It is appalling overall because essentially for the last 4 years we have had an ongoing coup attempt, and it's by the Democratic Party. The media is working in conjunction with them. The American people voted. If you don't like it, you do your job. If you're media, you report the news, good and bad, which they have not been doing. If you are a Democrat, you go out there, you do the best job you can for your constituents, and you run a campaign now showing, look, over the last 4 years, this is what we did for you, and this is why you should vote for us. Instead, they tried investigation, impeachment. Their entire platform right now is we have to get rid of Trump. And that's not a platform. A platform is what are you going to do to help the American people? And I haven't heard word one from the Democrats on what they're going to do.
Okay, let me ask you a question. I agree with you, Dr. Lopkin. Let me ask the question to Chris. When Biden, if he's elected, does the press go along with this, or do they start turning on him as well?
They will go along with this. They will not turn on him. And I think I disagree with Eric a little bit in this sense, Jeff, is that the idea that you're going to run a campaign and have ideas and win the battle of ideas is a little quaint to the Democrats. A large portion of this country have recoiled so much to Donald Trump, and people have voted for Donald Trump, that they literally want to change all of the rules, all of the American systems and institutions. A large portion of the Democratic side of the ideology, they want to tear everything down because Trump's election was so abhorrent that they don't only want to beat him on ideas, they want to change everything. And when you watch like the Supreme Court nominee questions from the Democrats, it all comes from a place that you're very impressive, Judge Barrett, but you were nominated by Donald Trump, so you can't be good. And you were nominated, and he shouldn't have the nomination because he shouldn't even be there. It all comes from the fact that there's a glitch in history, and Trump somehow is president and shouldn't be. And they're willing to tear everything down.
I agree with you, but isn't it more, Chris, that – hold on, I'm sorry. I think we have a break coming up.
Yeah, hold
Dr.
that
Lopkin?
thought. We'll be right back. Yeah, hold that thought. We'll be right back.
To reach the next level, you need to operate at peak performance. The key to this is mastering the 7 elements of success. Learn how to master mindset, focus, operations, communications, innovation, evaluation metrics, and continuous improvement. Get the Biznetics way at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and bookstores near you.
And we're back. And remember, you can be part of this conversation. call in to 563-999-3693. That's 563-999-3693.
Well, you know, we were talking. Here's what I really believe. Chris had a really good point. I believe, you know something? It was an inconvenient situation, or a convenient situation, I should say, that it's Donald Trump. Because what I really believe, if it made it convenient that it's Donald Trump. He's an easy target for all his flaws. But in the end, it's someone that's running against, I hate to say this, the swamp, whatever you call it, the deep state. And I believe that's really true. And I believe it shows that if you're not in line with the deep state, they're coming at you. Dr. Lopkin?
But it's more than just the deep state. I mean, as Chris pointed out, the Democrats were just appalled that Trump was able to win, and they want to change the rules so that doesn't happen again. But this isn't new for the Democrats. The Democratic Party wants to control who gets into office, and they want to change the rules, and this is not new. Remember, after Jimmy Carter won, they were not the liberal elite might have liked Jimmy Carter, but the party itself didn't. And they put in superdelegates so that if the Democratic voters voted for someone they didn't want, the superdelegates could overturn it. In the Republican primary, if the people vote for somebody, that's who gets the nomination. The Democrats have a way out of that. They have always wanted to rig the election, both against their own voters, and now they're trying to do it to rig it with the voters in general.
Yeah, but I've never seen, and again, I was around with Jimmy Carter. I was in high school, and I remember he got lambasted a lot in the press.
He did.
I've never seen a situation. Go ahead.
The media was much more unbiased back then.
That's
and
my
unfortunately,
point, is I've never seen a situation where you have a candidate that's clearly got dementia, cannot speak for more than 5 minutes without screwing up, and that's okay. I think that's dangerous. Because
we do not have an unbiased media anymore. Unfortunately, the fault of this lies with Ronald Reagan. Because Reagan's FCC appointees removed the fairness doctrine. Mm-hmm. This was a rule that said if you were a broadcaster, you had to broadcast both sides of the story. He thought he was doing it to actually avoid the situation that we have now. What was going on was because they didn't want to promote both sides of a story, they simply weren't covering anything. When he removed that, he took the gloves off of them, and they were able to go full bias, switch to the left.
Agreed. You know, growing up with Walter Cronkite, I read his biography. Chris, he was a liberal, you know, at heart, but gosh, I was not completely aware of that growing up with him because he was, as Dr. Lopkin was saying, kind of an honest broker to some degree. That's gone.
Sure.
Do you agree with Dr. Lopkin on that, Chris?
No, I do, and it's I'll just add that it's not just the bias; it's the lack of professionalism. Journalists used to have an ethos about professionalism that's gotten eroded. For example, you know, you'll do front page articles in major publications that are only based on anonymous, unnamed sources.
Yeah.
Even with bias years ago, publishers, there were gatekeepers, there was a journalistic ethics component that you would not do that. Today they do that routinely.
I was a journalist for a lot of years, and it was hammered into me that an article would not be published if, one, it wasn't confirmed by 3 independent sources, and at least one of those sources had to go on the record. If all I had was anonymous sources, there was no way it was going to see the light of day.
Yeah, that's definitely, out the door. It's just really disturbing to me that there's no, you had the MSNBC town hall where Savannah Guthrie just went crazy on Trump, and then you had Stephanopoulos kind of giving him and I agree with Chris, that was the better way, but it just shows. I mean, but it's dangerous for our democracy, isn't it, Chris?
It is dangerous for our democracy, and it's not healthy, but I'm still optimistic. We've talked about this before off air, that, this is, I believe, a phase, and the country struggles with things sometimes, and I don't think this will persist. It will change. I don't know what it'll change to, but I don't think it'll always be this bad. And I don't know if it means that Donald Trump has to leave the stage, or for technology to evolve, or the people who decide that this is not what they want. But I am optimistic that this will not persist, because if it does, we're heading fast to a very bad outcome. I don't believe that'll happen in this country. It's still the greatest country in the world, in my opinion. So I do think something will change, but it is very dangerous, Jeff.
Dr. Lopkin, comments? You were in the
Chris
press.
has it absolutely right. It's a very dangerous situation, because the press was always supposed to be the gatekeeper. The press was the one that kept politicians honest. Now, there have been certain things that the press has always played ball with politicians. Back in World War II, the general public did not know that FDR had polio and that he could not walk. The press kept that under wraps. But when there was an important issue, they always went forward with it. We no longer have that. We need a unbiased fourth estate to keep our politicians honest. Because right now, if you take a look at who's in office, with the exception of Trump and actually the squad, you have a group of politicians that average 30 years in office. This is their career, and all they're concerned about is keeping their jobs.
No, it's true. And I'm not sure they're really looking out for us, quite frankly. I mean,
No,
I think that
sure
when you get to Washington, you're living in gated communities, and I think it's all fine and dandy.
I mean, let's take a look. I'm going to use Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro as an example.
Oh, God.
Rosa DeLauro has represented the state of Connecticut for about 30 years. Now, over the past just 4 years, she's voted against tax cuts for Connecticut residents. She's voted against jobs with military spending. We have a lot of military jobs in Connecticut. She's voted against jobs for Connecticut, and yet the local media leaves her alone. They don't talk about it. They don't say, well, why aren't you standing up for us? Nothing. She's got a carte blanche to do what she wants. The media is supposed to hold these people accountable, and they're not doing it.
Do you agree with that, Chris?
I agree. I know Connecticut is a small state and in some ways may not have as much influence as some of the larger states like Florida, New York, and California. But I tell you, it's not just those with the law, and you bring up a good example. I mean, our congressional, not so much the senators, but the congressional representatives, you never see them anywhere. I mean, they're persona non grata. I don't see them in Connecticut. I don't see them in the Connecticut news. I'm not
to the point, Chris, I agree with you. It's a point of it. Once they get in, it's all about protecting their own power.
Yes, and I don't see them really working hard for Connecticut. Yep. So can
and that's not something that's unique to Connecticut. It goes, all over.
You think?
Agreed.
I don't know, but I mean, look, like AOC, you mentioned AOC, one of the 4 members of the squad. I don't agree with AOC on much, if anything. But I tell you what, AOC is out there. She's trying to make things happen. You know where she stands. And again, I disagree with her. But our Connecticut representatives, I think they're in hiding. They're in the witness protection program. So
I agree with you, Chris, and it's a great point. But if you're Larson or Delora, why not? I mean, if you go out on a limb, you could lose your job. It's a great job. I mean, why would you want to lose that? You don't care. I mean, it's so funny. Not funny. It's so disturbing how things have changed. Used to be representative government. People would go in and out in terms of our founding fathers, that, you would do that and then go back to your, architectural business or your, whatever business. Now you're career-long politicians, and why would you go out on a limb, especially in Connecticut? You're a Democrat, you get elected. Dr. Lopkin, why would you go out on a limb?
Yeah, that's the problem. In fact, Chris Murphy, right after he got elected, somebody I know was at a get-together that he appeared at, and this was overheard. He actually said, well, what do I care what anybody thinks now? It's not like they're not going to reelect me.
And that's why you get your mediocrity. And I've quoted Chris on this. He says he's seen more impressive people in, a week than he has in, years in public office. And that's what we're stuck with.
Yeah,
Look who's Kamala Harris. Look who's running for our vice president. My God.
Well, I mean, Kamala Harris is absolutely ridiculous. The head of the California Democratic Party has come out publicly and said that the only reason Kamala Harris has gotten as far as she has is because he was sleeping with her and he gave her positions because of that.
Yeah, and if you say that in the press, you would be ostracized till there's no tomorrow.
And
Very
yet
good.
He admitted it in a Politico article. It's out there, but no, you're not allowed to say it.
Of course not. If it was something to do with Trump or his daughter, his wife, it would be front page. And that's what we're really dealing with, aren't we, Chris? And it's not serving our democracy.
No, on multiple levels, the American people are being failed. Our leaders, our institutions are failing us. They lack integrity. They stay around too long. They lack professionalism. They're not the best and the brightest, and that's really a shame for the country because we deserve better. And amongst the population, there are some outstanding people that would do better if given the chance, but the system is rigged against them.
Well, I think it's not even rigged. I think it's Dr. Lopkin closing comment. I think Chris has a great point. The best in the world. Why would you go if you have a business? You're a professional. Why would you go? It's the bottom of the barrel at this point.
We've said this over and over again. The best and the brightest don't go into politics, unfortunately.
Well, yeah. Well, Chris, thanks so much for being on the show. Dr. Lopkin, I think another good edition of Carnivore Radio. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And you can listen to the replay of this at the Apple Podcasts app, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. And remember, you can also hear our Carnivore Bites podcasts with quick analysis in the middle of the week.
And we so thank Chris Calandra from Elliott Wealth Management from coming on the show, don't we? He's always a great guest.
Thank you, guys.
Always great. We look forward to having you back.
Take care.